I know what you're thinking. Jeff, did you just eat that ice cream right out of the tub? Yeah. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 511 Innovations YouTube channel. As you can see, the Pro Mod is gone. We are moving on to this Ford Falcon. So much different project, obviously. Kind of a change of pace. I really don't mind going from the all-out race car stuff to street car stuff and back. They're very different processes when it comes to wiring them, all different materials, but always learning something new. So this one's very cool. I believe it's a 64. If you know better, correct me, but it has a Coyote 6R80 Ford control pack. It's got vintage air, power seat, power brakes, Dakota Digital, electric parking brakes, quick six shift controller for transmission, American Auto Wire chassis harness. All kinds of stuff going on with this deal. So this will be cool. So right now, to start, I started on this a couple months ago now, actually. And then ran into a couple things. This has, where is it? This has an electric shift motor. I believe it's actually in here. With a push button keypad for shifting the transmission. And it was programmed and had the wrong harness it was ordered with, so I had to send that back. And at that point, you know, I had other projects that I had to get to, so we're back. So we're back on it. We're gonna crank it out till it's done. This is all the Dakota Digital stuff. Here, this is the drawing for it. As you can see, I got that all mounted and done back when I was working on it before. There's more. There's more on the back of that plate, trust me. But this is the drawing for that. And really, the first stages of this, this is a big mess right now, so ignore the scattered, but I just got everything kind of on paper as far as what all the connections are that are gonna need to be made. And then, because every one of these systems has, you know, a power and a ground and an ignition power. And I prefer to just pre-plan all of that and, you know, have all that come from the same place. So it's more factory, you know, rather than just having butt splices everywhere. And it just gets to be kind of a mess. So the goal, and the reason that if you look here, these are terminated to some connectors, is this whole thing's gonna be designed to where I can build it on the bench and then put it in the car, just like they would have at the factory. And to do that requires a lot of planning and making sure that everything can be fairly modular and disconnected, so that way, so for example, so this comes as a pigtail. I'm not going to butt splice this to another wire and run that under the dash because it just looks like crap. So I sourced these terminals that fit in this connector, and I will D-pin this, and then I will run my wires right to this connector, and I'll get rid of this pigtail. So as you can see, that's what these are. There's a few different ones that I sourced for different things with this. Right here. So those are the terminals for this connector. So I'm gonna D-pin this, and then I'll run my own wires from the harness that I will build right to this connector, and there will be no splicing. So that's how I try to do everything. Makes it a lot cleaner, less connection points to fail. So for example, see, that's gonna have to be able to run. I'll probably clean this hole up a bit and stick a grommet in that, and then these will have to run through that. So I have to think about what I need to do to make that happen. So pretty early stages of this thing. And obviously, this car is very much not assembled. So that makes things a little bit difficult also because, you know, I have to be really careful not to run wiring in the way of things that are going to be put on later, right? So like there's nothing in the dash. And obviously there's going to be an ashtray and a radio and a glove box and all that put in here. And I'm not an expert on the layout of this particular car. So I spent a lot of time kind of on Google looking at images and forums and stuff and trying to find where everything's routed from the factory and try to mimic that as much as I possibly can. The battery was located to the back. So that's back here. So I need to run cables back to here. Fuel system is done. This is a US 12-speed custom project. They're the ones doing all the mechanical and fabrication work on this. And then they just brought it to us to wire it. So them and their customer have been very patient waiting on this project to be finished. So we're gonna do that now. Here in the next couple weeks, we'll get this thing wrapped up, and it is on us to fire it and test the transmission, make sure everything works. Obviously, everything electrical will be tested before it leaves. I will not be road testing it, obviously, because one, it's not street legal, it doesn't have any glass in it or anything like that. So yeah, anyways, so stick around for that. There's going to be a lot of work, and I'll show you kind of how I go about tackling these projects and make them as clean as possible and as well thought out as possible, and then provide the documentation for the owner. So if they ever want to add anything later, they can, and make any troubleshooting that might be necessary later more easy. And actually, on the topic of adding things later, I had to prep for possible, I just had to add this a minute ago, paddle shift. So that'll be pretty cool. So there'll be a connector up under the dash that if they ever want to run paddle shifters, they can add that later, because this thing's going to be pretty stout, as you can imagine. Really, really nice parts on this thing. US 12 did the exhaust, turns out super nice. They do a nice job. This car is awesome. So I'm gonna get to that, and I will film another update later on. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for all the support on the first video. I know it was terrible, but I had to get something out. I had to show off that car. That car is too cool not to. So thank you for watching. Those of you that did, thank you to everybody that reached out with support and suggestions and everything. We will try to implement that into this series, and you know, we'll move forward with that. I think it's gonna be awesome. Thanks for watching. Okay, so I'm kind of rewrapping my head around some of this. So like I said, it has the Ford controls pack in it. And this uses, I guess all of this is gonna stay. I really don't like this stuff, but this is gonna stay. And then I laid out all of the harnesses that come with all of the devices we're gonna be using. And I kind of want to show you guys what I think about while I'm looking at this. And, you know, at the end of this project, we'll see what it's like at the end. But this is the Vintage Air harness. As you can see, this is just electrical taped. This is for the transmission controller. This has a pretty nice split braid, like a Tech Flex split braid on it. Not bad. This is for the electric parking brake. This harness is pretty nice, but also a different loom type. This is the electric shift controller. This is the keypad I was telling you guys about. So this just communicates via CAN to the controller in the car, and then this is the harness for that, and the instructions. Somebody had already started modifying the control pack harness for like the fuel pump and that kind of thing. So I need to take this apart, and I ordered new terminals for this connector so I could do the same like I showed you with the brake. system earlier. And then somebody had already started modifying the American Auto Wire chassis harness also. So this is all going to come back apart just because I'm not sure what's what, and it has another different kind of loom on it. And I just can't have 4 or 5 different loom types on one vehicle. So all these are going to get stripped down. All these harnesses will get merged together and reloomed as one. The control pack harness in the car was ordered for a manual transmission. So it's missing some signals that I need. So I had to order a tack adapter because there's no RPM signal for the transmission. So I need to wire this in to get a RPM signal. And also there's a couple other signals I can't remember now. American Auto Wire, I started going through these, and I'll be just removing anything I don't need, so there's not just extra wire looped up under the dash. I'll remove everything I don't need. I've started doing that, crossing it off and labeling where stuff's gonna come from and go to. And I've started organizing this a little bit more based on where everything's gonna be located in the car. So hopefully at the end, I'll be able to just show all of this loomed together into one harness, and it won't look like this anymore. So I'm gonna keep digging into this, and I'll start removing a lot of this and moving on, and I'll update you guys in a little bit. Okay, so the Wilwood electronic parking brake loom is de-loomed. It's actually a pretty nice harness. I'm pretty impressed. They use proper splices and everything. The loom was taped up really nice. But the breakouts just weren't landing what was gonna fit this car cleanly. So I'll be able to loom this whole harness along with the others that travel to similar areas of the car. I ended up just cutting the terminals off, and I have more of those, so I'll just redo those for these connectors that actually connect to the parking brake motors out of the brakes. So I'm gonna do the same thing to the rest of these looms, and then we will be ready. These harnesses will be ready to start laying out and taking some measurements in the car and kind of taping them together where they're going to branch out together and that sort of thing. So I'll do more of that now. All right, guys, it's Monday. Time to really hit the ground running on the Falcon. As you saw in the time lapse over the weekend, I got all of these harnesses de-loomed. And right now I am working on how exactly I'm gonna power each of these. So the nice thing in the American Auto Wire is they give you an accessory connector with a few different circuits that are just kind of spares that are fuse protected. So obviously each of these needs power and some of them ignition power. Like for the Vintage Air, for example, this has a relay built into the harness, but then the relay just kind of ends up randomly under the dash somewhere along with the circuit breaker, and I don't know, I just don't like that. So I'm gonna end up actually making this myself. And we have these little enclosures made for the leash dual relay. And I'm gonna use this for the vintage air relay and the power brake relay. So that's gonna go mounted up under the dash right near this fuse panel. And that'll supply the power for those two devices. Then everything else here doesn't need a relay. So that'll cover those. It'll clean everything up. Everything will be kind of in the same spot. I need to lay the fuse panel out in here. See exactly how it's gonna fit up in here. And then I can get the rest of that stuff mounted because it all needs to be mounted before I can measure and start putting this harness together. So I'm gonna work on that today and I'll bring you guys along with me. So my star employee finally showed up for the day. Unbelievable. But I did find, I'm assuming US 12 added these, but I didn't even see them at first, but they already have studs in here for the fuse panel. So it's perfect. So it's gonna go right there. I added a flange, I actually just put a flange Deutsch connector in here for the power brake module. So bang, that just goes there. Pressure switch and power and ground. And then this is the Classic Update series from American Auto Wire, which works great if your vehicle is mostly factory. Not as great when it's more like this. So because everything's in a different spot, they actually, in the instructions, they want you to mount fuse panel right in there where the vintage air is at. So, and that's how everything was originally laid out. So I untied everything in this. The good thing is, the things that we are removing out of this, we can rob their power and ground from. For example, the ignition feed, typically goes to an old ignition box for, a carbureted car. So I can steal that for one of the other devices that are in here. And that's a pretty good size feed, and then it'll be fused right at the fuse box. And then we don't need an inline fuse on the harness itself, like this. And that just ends up somewhere under the carpet or something. It's junk, so we're not doing that. So I've gone through this, the instructions, and just crossed out everything I can remove, relabeled where they're gonna go now, and then in here, you can see, where's an example? Right here. So you can see that I just say, yeah, American Auto Wire number 53H. Fan wire is gonna go to, since the electric fan is now driven from the control pack, or triggered, we'll just send this as our ignition. What is your deal? Is that all? We'll just use that for our ignition trigger for, oh my gosh, you need to go out? Come on, get out of here. Unbelievable. Yeah, anyways, so working through that right now. I'm gonna finish trimming this down. I just filled my belly, so we're good for at least another 20 minutes, and then I'll need a snack. Got the relay situation mounted up in here. This will close like that. So I'm gonna figure out the best place for this. So you kind of need to be able to get to it sometimes, but it's also like once it's programmed, you're kind of good. I put the Wilwood electronic parking brake controller in here. I thought about building a little bracket, stacking these or something like this, or even upside down would make it easier to get to the USB. I don't know yet. I gotta figure it out. All right, guys, I think this will be the last update for part 1 of the Falcon wiring project. Got a little bit more done today. Got the Wilwood brake module and the Quick 6 mounted. It's upside down, which isn't ideal, but as far as wiring goes, it's great because there's a connector on this far side and then on the top, and that'll just make the fuse panel is going to be here, and all that wiring is going to come right up through here. So that'll make merging that with that loom pretty easy. And then it's really easy access to the USB port to program it. Mounted the relays here. I think I showed you that already. A couple other just small things. Got the dimmer switch mounted, the throttle pedals mounted. Got the control pack wiring harness kind of ran how I'm going to do it. Have figured out how the wiring to the back of the car is going to work. Have thinned down the American Auto wire harness even more. And while I was working on this, I realized that I just need to basically build this entire harness as if it was a custom from scratch deal. This whole time I've kind of been trying to figure out an easier way to merge all these different harnesses together. And it's just not gonna end up, the product will probably turn out okay, but the documentation for the owner isn't gonna be as good as if I just design it all from scratch and lay out everything on my drawing that's actually there. I was just gonna kind of just show where I interconnect with these harnesses and then just include these drawings from these other products, but I'm just gonna put it all in my drawing set so that way the owner just has one book to look at, and it'll make it a lot easier for me to build it. So I'm gonna do that. It's $8:42. I'll probably try to bang that out until about midnight or so. I think it's just gonna end up being a better product in the end and less chance of missing something on my part, just because there is so many little things. I had to order a few things. The alternator, it's got a Mechman alternator in it, which has a GM style plug on there. And the control pack harness obviously has a Ford plug. So I had to order a plug for that so I can re-terminate it for that alternator. And kind of got some of the control pack harness tied up how it's going to be, so that way I know how the headlight wiring and everything's going to flow. This is obviously all this came like this with the AC lines routed in here. So I'll just route this up and over. I'm probably going to put a clamp here somewhere just to hold that in, and I think that's just going to be the path that the headlight wiring follows for this side. There's already a pass-through in the floor right there for the starter. So I believe from the factory, a lot of this wiring routed right through this channel here. So I'm going to continue that. This is the ground for the ECU, the Ford control pack. So that'll be good. I'll do that probably on both sides. I guess I'll have to see how that lays out best. But yeah. So yeah, getting all of this in one drawing, and my drawing in the end is going to be a lot better. It's a little bit more time in the design stage for me, but I think it's going to save that much or more time later. So this is it for part one. Part two should have much more visually appealing updates. So that'll be fun. That'll come out in about a week. So stay tuned. Next time you guys see this, there will be wire in it. There will be a harness built. There will be a harness built. Whether or not it's in there, TBD. I hope it's in there. There will be a harness built, and it'll start looking a lot better. All of this will become one, like we've been talking about. So anyways, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for part two. Like, share, and subscribe. Do all that good stuff. Stick around. Thank you.